We're live. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Today is January. Can I think about what month we're in? January 3rd, 2024. It is now 2:03. We have a quorum now, so we're going to go ahead and call the Audit and Finance meeting to order. Can I get a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, the ayes have it. Now for a motion to approve the meeting minutes from December 5th, 2023.
So moved.
We have a motion. We have
Second.
a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we will move on to 2A. I will take this one for what we were, as I mentioned, first I'll start off with a timeline. Back in September, when we started looking at the new charter, I was talking regarding changing the format of the Audit and Finance meeting to add in public comments. And that's what we're moving forward to right at this moment. I mentioned this back in November as well as the December meeting. We will be moving forward with changing the format of the Audit and Finance meeting. The way that the mock-up Audit and Finance agenda meeting is written here is not all the way correct. What we will do, we will have the information items for any action presented first. We will listen to all information items. Following that, we will have public comments. Anybody from the public can sign up for public comments and talk about any of the information items presented that we will be taking action on. Following the public comments, if we had any public comments, then we will move into the action items and actually vote on, we will take the motion, the second, final discussion, and vote on those actions. That will be the new format moving forward, going into February's meeting. From there, we would go into any information items that were just being presented for information without any actions attached to them. We have any thoughts, concerns, questions from the chair, from any committee members, district staff?
Darren, this is Keith. I'm just what you've got is the documents. So what you would be doing is putting the number 3 in front of number 2.
Yes. So yeah, it's exactly right. So number 3 will go in front of number 2, but it will be presented as information. Then we'll go, once we have public comments, we'll move back into the action and finally take the motion in the second. That way we can get any public comments or any other information that is presented before we actually take an action.
So that schedule all sounds rational and logical to me. Has it been an issue with constituents being concerned that they don't have an opportunity to?
No, since we don't have public comments at committee of the whole now, they should just go ahead to the committee that they want to give the comments on. Perfect example would be when we had the information presented about the what is it at Lucy Beckham, the barn,
the gym.
Yeah, well, the gym, the barn that they wanted to build over there. Instead of them having to come to the CAL and the board meeting, they could have come to the Audit and Finance meeting where.
Got it.
At the Audit and Finance meeting instead of just pushing it over the CAL onto the board.
And I also think this is important as we get into the budget. What I think happened last year, we kind of got, I don't want to say blindsided, but we weren't part of the process in which the district was working with these other constituent groups on the teachers. And, suddenly, in March, we found out there had been a lot of discussion going on about, salary discussions and everything. So that is an issue that obviously would have come through Audit and Finance. And you would anticipate there would have been a lot of, constituents that would have, or teachers, anybody would have been talking. So I think it's a good format.
All right, so we will get the mock-up agenda updated, and then we like I said, next month we'll move forward with the new format of the Audit and Finance speaking. So I think we only have one guest inside the room. I think. Do we have any public comments that anybody want to speak? Hearing and seeing none, we will move forward to action item 4A, which would be the capital program phase 5 sales tax budget reallocation. Right. Mr. Garowe and
I'll
Ms.
take that,
Shaw.
Mr. Cullen. Yeah, Ms. Shaw is,
Yeah,
Is that-
there's some stuff going on?
she's rather detained at her
Okay,
seat.
that's what I thought.
So I'll pick up the slack here. So this is a proposed reallocation of Phase 5 sales tax funds. This is a follow-up to the board's decision to, in the Lambs project, include a consolidation of Hunley Park and Lambs. That reduced the scope of that project, allowing for funds to be moved. The first place we needed to look was Goodwin, because Goodwin wasn't going to be recapitalized. What work was needed at Goodwin? We're looking at a multi-purpose room and enclosing the corridors between the buildings as well as to the multi-purpose room and adding a car loop. We've got significant traffic off of Dorchester Road. That car loop had been in the plans all along. It just had never been funded. So that's the biggest proposal for the reallocation, is to upgrade Goodwin to a standard, because it wasn't included in the expectation that it would be demolished. So that makes up for the district-wide improvements for Goodwin, the district-wide paving improvements for Goodwin. And then the other two are expansion needs at Ladson and Stall. So Stall, the original 300 student addition, had not been escalated for inflation. So this covers that in a wave 3 project. And Ladson is additional escalation that's provided, that's needed on that site. That leaves us with program contingency. That program contingency of 4.5. This will be a 2-step process. We're putting it back in program contingency, and then next month we'll come back to audit and finance to move it into capital maintenance. Bless you. Both for Goodwin capital maintenance, roof and doors and hardware, and Baptist Hill athletics. So that's where that 4.5 million will go next month.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions from Ms. Roberson?
Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. Mr. Barori, you answered my first question about the remaining balance being used for future needs. So it is not just for Goodwin, it will be for the needs of the district. So you answered that. I have just one other question. I'm looking at board approved November 13th of 46 million. Can you remind me, what did we approve that for?
So which one are we looking at, ma'am? I'm sorry.
On the second page, I'm looking at the capital programs, and it has board approved 11/13/2023, 46 million, and it doesn't have any information.
So that
This is Ms. Shaw. I can take that one. So the most recent one that we've done prior to this one, so at the Ladson site, we have about 3 different phases that we're doing for the site: relocating portables to the front, building a new school in the back. And as a part of that process, we were required to add additional stormwater and ponds. We were required to treat each individual phase as an independent facility or site that would be, a standalone if we were to walk away and do nothing. So that required us to add more stormwater to that particular project up front. So that was added as a part of the permitting process at that time.
So can I enhance that answer, Jasmine?
Certainly.
I think what Mrs. Roberson's asking about is on the reallocation form. The last board approved action on the 13th of November was for 46 million. Is that correct, Mrs. Roberson?
Correct.
Okay. I think, and I'll turn to Joyce here. I think the lines on the far right are just off a little bit. That 46 million went toward all of the athletics listed in those last 3 lines. Military Magnet, Stall, North Charleston High, Academic Magnet, Baptist Hill, Burke, Beckham, and District 4 high schools.
Got it. So they're off.
Okay.
Correct. It's just the alignment is a little bit different on the far right there. So the 7 million in the board approved item above that went to St. John's. That was for the St. John's Park project.
Got it.
And then all of those remaining items or locations were for the 46 million.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grabowski.
No, I have no questions.
All right, Mr. Duke. No.
You should-
Nothing.
Questions?
All right. I have no questions. All right, we'll go ahead and call for the question. Do we have a motion to approve the reallocation of funds as shown on the attached resolution?
So moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
Second, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 The ayes have it. We will now move forward to our Head Start, Early Head Start FY25 continuation grant application. Ms. Foxworth. Good afternoon. Is that on? Wait.
Hello. Okay.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Happy New Year. Chairperson Calhoun, Vice Chair Dunmeyer, Audit and Finance Committee, and Acting Superintendent Huggins. Unlike the previous month, this month I'm here for the annual submission of the Head Start budget. We have to submit the budget, the whole continuation grant, including the budget by March 1st. But because of how the board meetings run, we have to start now to get the signed document. So in addition to improving monthly financial statements, an annual approval of the Head Start funding application for Head Start and Early Head Start is required as part of our application. I'm here presenting what you have is our budget. It's not much different than most years. Our budget is for $11.7 million. Every year it goes up a little bit every year. It's $900,000 different than last year. In the spring, we tend to get an application for quality and COLA improvement. So that was the addition to what you approved last year. So the 11.7 includes the last year's funding as well as the COLA and grant application and quality improvement funds. We are going to move forward with continuing to be funded for 590 Head Start students serving 3-year-olds and 240 early Head Start students. You may recall this time last year, we did a major conversion to try to meet the needs of more early Head Start students. So we went from 180 to 240 early Head Start slots. In addition, everything else remains the same except for 2 features. We continue to support the certification of Head Start teachers to certified positions. Next year, we're on track to have 3 more are going to be certified. And this will bring the total number of Head Start certified teachers to 23 out of 35. So we're making progress. We're excited about that. The second is after we submitted the grant last year, we were told by the Office of Head Start that our definition of full year, extended year was different than their definition. So their definition is truly 240. So we are on the journey to begin to transition our early Head Start classrooms to full year. And so we've been granted permission to start at 3 sites. And so that's 24 positions. Remember, 24 is 2 in each class. So it's really 12 classrooms, and we're doing that 3 sites. So those are the 2 major additions to the grant, is that we had to include some site managers, extend their year, full year. We have to do the teachers, and then some floaters because it's summer and they will be absent. So we need to make sure we have substitutes. So those are the major changes. Everything else is pretty much the same, but I'm always open to answer any questions.
Thank you. Ms. Roberson?
I have no questions. Thank you, Ms. Foxworth.
All right, Mr. Grabowski?
Yeah, Ms. Foster, and I just, it's always this question. So all of these additions and everything are within what's being requested under the compliance with the federal funding?
Yes, the early Head Start expansion is going to be fully funded under the 11.7 that we have. It'll take away some of our supply funding, but we will continue to pay salaries.
And so the only funding that you're looking at a deficit on with all these increases will be on the supplies?
Not at this time. It just, maybe our funding, our supply funding used to be so big, but the more we have to put into salaries, it just will lessen it. But right now we are still fully supported by Head Start. The only contribution that GOF makes other than the non-federal share is the 50% for some of our certified teachers. Other than that, Head Start is sustainable with its own funds.
And do we have any estimate of what our contribution is?
Avis is on. Can you pull Avis up? She has the exact number. She should be on.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. In the column that's identified as non-federal share, That is the GOF contribution. It should be the second or last column on the spreadsheet. It's $776,000 for the teachers and approximately $360,000 for the TAs.
And what's the difference between last year and this year?
Approximately $120,000, and that's what partially due to the additional teachers that were added on.
Oh, that's not the COLA, that's just the additional teachers.
That's just additional teachers and TAs, yes, sir.
And with the additional teachers and PAs, we're doing how many extra students?
They're not extra students, they're actual students that are included in 590 Head Start students.
So we haven't been able to increase the number of students we can provide the services to yet?
Not in Head Start, no, sir.
No, we did that last year with early Head Start, but for the federal government, you have to go through what's called a conversion. And so that's what we did last year. We gave up because we were struggling with getting some of our 4-year-olds, because we had 4-year-olds in Head Start and CD, and it was too hard to get them combined. So now we serve them in CERT-up. And so we did a conversion. So they took away we removed some of our, not take away, we decided to transition some of our Head Start slots to add more early, because early is where our largest waiting list was. And still is.
And do you anticipate any issues with, I mean, what's the timeline on converting from 190 to 240?
We've already done that. That was during the last cycle. We are currently serving 240 this current school year.
Oh, it's in Alaska.
Yes.
Oh, great, great. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Duke.
No, I'm good.
All right. I see we got Ms. Stamp on. Ms. Stamp, do you have any questions? We'll move forward. Any questions?
I'm just interested in understanding how many folks are on the waiting list. I mean, how much of the need are we not able to satisfy?
Sure. Every year it's different. Our waiting list, I think at this peak was 500. So,
Is that on Head Start or the early Head Start?
Early Head Start.
What about on the Head Start?
Head Start, we don't have as much, maybe 150 at this time. And remember, with Head Start, some of our children on the wait list are over income. And so I think for early Head Start, it's about 100 that are over income, and then 400 that are approximately. We still don't, in this community, we do not have enough childcare for anyone. And so we do have a lot of families who apply, and we do have a priority list. Obviously, Head Start prioritizes families who are in poverty, children who have individual education plans. And so even with that, we just don't have enough slots, but we're going to continue to prioritize and serve as many kids as we can.
And what's the gating item to being able to satisfy those kids is it a federal restriction, or is
it
our own budget for our piece?
Sure. So, and Avis can join in anytime. It's not an easy feat to do a conversion. And so we can't it's not like we can go to the federal government and say, just give us this more money because of our waiting list to serve more kids. You have to show why. We have to do the conversion because they really want you to work within the allotted budget. And there hasn't been, Head Start in the Congress has not even been fully funded years after years. And also we have to look at quality, honestly. I want to make sure that the 590 students that we have are getting the best education possible before I even talk about expanding into Head Start.
Thanks.
And Kim, I can also share that the federal government allocates a fixed dollar amount every year based on the 2016 allocation. And with that monies, that doesn't increase unless you have the funding is reallocated on the federal level, and then we can apply. But we did apply for the maximum and was awarded the maximum amount for Charleston County.
And we are, just because it may get out there, there's some sites that are not fully enrolled because at that site, there's not enough children. So that waiting list is at certain sites, may not be all sites.
Thank you.
Thank you. That actually answered my question I had coming up. So we will now hear no more questions. And I saw Ms. Stamp said that she was having tech issues. It wasn't a question and it wasn't inside the chat. Yeah, I know, she said she had tech issues. Okay, cool.
Darren, I don't have, Mr. Calhoun, I don't have any questions, but I just want to say that this was a very good report. Very detailed, easy to follow. So, thank you, for this report, Ms. Foxworth. It was very, very good.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, thank you for hearing that. No more questions. We will now take I'll ask for a motion to approve the early Head Start funding application for the grant period June 1, 2024 to 2025.
So move.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and second. No further discussion. Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. All right, moving forward to purchasing contracts greater than 250,000. Mr. Craven.
Yes, good afternoon, committee. So for the month of January, we have 5 items for the purchasing contracts above 250,000 between facilities management, information technology, capital programs for a total of nearly $53 million. Open up for any questions over the line items for this month.
All right, we will start off with Ms. Robertson.
Mr. Craven, I guess I will continue to ask this question until the answer changes. Any updates from you on the reporting methods for this report? The last time we talked, you were going to look at the disparity study in which this request came out of. Have you been able to do that?
No, I thought the next step was we were going to meet offline and discuss what items you would like to be presented in this form. I'm open to any time that I have available to discuss what items you would like to see presented.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat?
No, I think in December I had offered to sit down with any of the committee members and see what information of these contracts you would like to be presented, and that way I know what, basically get what do you guys want to see, and then ensure whoever's submitting the information that it gets on there. So
Okay.
I'm open to that meeting to see what information you would like to have added to this list.
Added or explain a little more?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. You want to try to set that up for next week?
Or if there's something specific you want to just have added in discussion here, that's fine as well. I just didn't want to consume an entire ANF meeting with it. But if it warrants an extra meeting, I'm more than happy to do so. But if there's 1 or 2 things specific, or any one of these specific line item details you want to just, if it's just more information in general.
No, I don't think that was the issue. I think this, from my understanding, this came out of a disparity report. And I think what I'm trying to find, I'll just speak for myself, what exactly were they asking for to show from that disparity report? Because this is not, to me, the best way to report it. And I thought that you were going to go back to look at that disparity study to find out exactly what was documented in that report and why they requested this report. It looks like the district needed to come up with a way to report items more than 250.
Absolutely.
But we can talk about this offline. I'll move on to my next question. Ms. Shaw,
Sorry, I'm
line
at
item-
university, so you might hear some testing in the background, but yes, ma'am.
number 5, line item 5,
Yes,
and the solicitation for 46 million. I'm assuming you may be able to speak to this. It was advertised for 25 days with 3 bids received. it just seems like a large amount. Maybe this is for the procurement director. Is this standard to 25 days for such a large contract?
Well, I think Craven can take maybe the technical, how many days is required.
The number of days that you need to solicit really depends on the complexity of the contract, not necessarily the dollar amount. I don't have the very specifics, so I can't speak to this one directly without after confirming with my procurement officer. But as far as solicitation timelines go, it really depends on the complexity of the solicitation.
So can you find that out, the complexity of this $46 million contract, to see if it meets the guidelines for just being solicited for 25 days?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm done.
All right, thank you, Mr. Grabowski.
And I'd like to add on to some reporting, as Ms. Roberson is, alluding to. So, what we're seeing is that under this report that it was sent out for 25 days, and you received 3 bids. So, at this point, am I correct in understanding that the bid has not been awarded?
No, sir, we have not awarded anything. We do that after we get final approval, but it has not been awarded.
So you need our final approval before you can award the bid.
Yes, sir. When we get board approval at the end of this month, once we get board approval for the items over 250, then we'll proceed with going under contract with the person that's on the list, contract construction. Oh, Mr. Grabowski, I think I hear your mouth moving, but I think you are on mute there.
There you go. Thank you. And I'm just trying to understand the procurement process, because this is a big bid, obviously. And I know you guys are all doing your job and making sure that, the contractors that are applying for this are well vetted and have the capability of doing this. But then we run into something like what we're experiencing now with Hersey. And, sometimes you just wonder, these are all sealed bids, I'm assuming, which is part of the procurement process. But when you come up to this, I can hear the constituents out there saying, what are we doing so that we don't run into another Morningside type of issue? And it really, it could be just as simple as this is the amount of information that we can give out publicly before making these type of decisions. So I think that's why when you look at the report like this, and then the decision you're being asked to make, why there's some concern, and Ms. Roberson, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that this just seems to be very limited in the amount of information you're given. And I don't know what the answer is. I think we just have to go by whatever procurement says is what we can do, and we just have to understand what procurement says, what the process is, and then we have to rely on you.
Well, I do know that.
That's the only thing. I just see that out of that, it's just such a big amount. I know we pushed it through, at the initial meeting, at our last meeting, so that we could get to this stage, but.
Mr. Grabowski, if I can just offer a couple of points, because obviously Hersey related to this project is weighing in everybody's minds. The bid process is 2-step.
Right.
We have a screening process to shortlist those that are qualified to bid, to low bidder. So it isn't a free-for-all. Not everybody can bid. They go through a process where we look at qualified contractors. The second point to that, when you say, well, what happened at Hersey? the contractor at Hersey has had success with the district. The Cooper River CAS is one of their projects. That is probably the best facility we have in the district right now. So even under a perfect scenario, things can come into play that lead to challenges in the construction project in the end. But that two-step process is integral to working ahead to the future to prevent mistakes from happening again if it can be helped. So I hope that helps a little bit lay out how we do the business generally.
Frozen. We lost him. All right.
Yeah, Mr. Barori, it does. And thank you for that. But I think Mr. Kabrowski and I, we are still really concerned about the reporting format. And if Mr. Craven can do a little due diligence, and I'm just wondering if he's happy with this reporting format after he reads the disparity study to see what actually came out of that study and why we moved to this report. So I think it's more of the reporting and making sure that we have all the information so that we are making the best decision and an informed decision before we pass it on to the board. So thank you for that.
Thank you. We will move.
Yeah, I have no more further questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Duke.
Just two quick questions. I think they'll go over to Tom. Tom, on line item 3, all those laptops on replacement are Windows-based laptops, correct?
That is correct. We have about 2,000 devices we're purchasing.
So that line item is getting 2,000 new laptops, and then the next line, what's all Chromebook replacements, correct?
That's correct. There's 500 of those.
And 500 of those. All right. So there's definitely a big price point difference between what we're paying for a laptop Windows-based versus we're paying on the Chromebooks.
$1,500 versus about $600 delivered and installed with white glove service.
And what's the life cycle on both, on the Chromebooks and
We're shooting for 5 years for each.
All right.
Laptops, sometimes we have to push a little bit farther than 5 years, but that's about our average.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Can you check the chat to see if Ms. Stamp has anything? Hey, can you check the chat to see if Ms. Stamp has anything? All right. So we don't have any. Oh, are you there?
Okay, so I switched to my phone. So
all right. There you go. Questions?
Just a question on the construction. Ms. Shaw said that the contract has not been awarded yet.
Mm-hmm.
And how does that work with the district? You can disclose who the selected vendor is prior to fully entering into a contract?
Well, we've been instructed to put the name of the person on the 250 list, including the amount or name of company. So that's the only reason why, it's there. And we haven't had a case where we didn't get approval to move forward from the 250 list. So I guess in the event that we are maybe in that situation, we could either go with the next person on the list, the second person, or whatever the situation is, we'll have to resolve it from there. We just never ran into that type of situation.
Okay, it just may be different for, I guess, the district than with with other state agencies, because we're not allowed to disclose who our vendor is until everything has been negotiated. And so I was just a little curious about, being that this is a public forum and this now becomes public information.
That may be something that could be maybe a part of the change, I don't know, to the 250 list, but that's a great question that you brought up, a great comment.
Yeah, I'll take that for action.
All right, so we'll take a look at that moving forward as well. Thank you, Ms. Stamp. Questions?
No additional questions.
All right, and I have no questions, so I guess we can now call for the motion, which will be a motion to approve the list of purchases and contracts greater than 250,000 through October 25th, 2023.
So moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Opposed?
We have, what's that, 6 ayes and 1 opposed. And it moves forward. We will now go to FY25 audit plan, and that will be Ms. Carlin.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Mhm.
So in 2020, Elliott Davis, a CPA firm that we have used on multiple occasions to audit agreed upon procedures, they developed an internal audit plan to help the Audit and Finance Committee monitor risk. And this plan was recently updated in collaboration with Fraser and Dieter. You probably recognize that CPA firm because they did the most recent ESSER audit. And the audit plan builds on the prior work that Elliott Davis did for us. And so when you look at the attachment, the geography of the document, the first column lists the audit areas in bold with their key areas listed underneath that. And the second column identifies each area's risk level. And we also wanted to include the audits that have already been completed. And you can see those in that third column. And we're making recommendations through the end of fiscal year 24 that we're in right now, and then recommendations for fiscal year 25, 26, and 27. The cost ranges anywhere from $39,000 to $60,000. It could be higher depending on the scope of the work. And if you have any questions, please let me know.
All right, Ms. Robertson.
Yes. Ms. Collins, the budget, the description for budget, it says moderate high. And the next, I guess, review is not recommended until FY25. Is there a particular reason why it's not recommended for FY24?
Well, we're getting ready to go into budget season, and to be able to do an audit like that in the middle of budget season would really not be fair to staff. What we could do is start it off in early fiscal year 25, if this is something that Audit and Finance Committee and the board wants to take a look at.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I guess, is that going to be the answer for information technology as well? That was risk level high, and it's not recommended again until FY26.
Mm-hmm. Well, we just did that one in fiscal year 22. And here again, if the Audit and Finance Committee, as well as the board, wants to push that up, we can certainly do that. Mm-hmm. We were just trying to fairly across the board recommend audits in all these different key areas across the board.
Yeah, I guess for me,
Kennedy has a comment.
And it goes down to capital program and facilities, the same thing. It's high and it's not recommended until FY26. It just seems like we would put something in place for these areas that are high risk.
Yes, ma'am. These can be adjusted if that's what Audit and Finance Committee and the board prefers. That's not a problem at all. Mr. Kennedy had a comment.
Okay. So if you take a look at the second document that's attached, it's I think a 59-page document.
Yes.
That was the risk assessment that was done by the audit firm that Jackie referenced. And so in that risk assessment, all the areas that's listed on that table has a lot of details about what the risks are to the district. And once the audit firm went through that risk assessment, they built this this recommended audit schedule based on the risk. And then this the FY25 and beyond that's being presented today is an update by the external audit firm, again, based on the original risk. The lead auditor on the FY25 plan that's being presented today was the auditor that was, I think it was the auditor in charge of this in this company when we did the risk assessment back in 2020. And so it's based on the standards that the audit firm does for determining risk in particular areas in the time it takes to get the audits done, and also taking into consideration from the district standpoint the resources available to do it, both financial and staff to be able to participate in audits.
Yeah, and that's in looking at the detailed report, I see exactly what you're talking about in the different audit areas, and it says, you know, every 12 months for example, payroll, if it was high. It's just concerning to me. And I went through the 56-page document that you're referencing. I think this is something that I would like to have more discussion on.
So I think to Jackie's point, I mean, it comes down to 2 points. One, resources. Do we have the financial wherewithal to do, you know, more than 3 or 4 audits a year? And then the answer to that is yes, you know, to pay the audit firm to do it. Then the second question is, do we have staff capacity to support that many audits during the year?
Yeah, and sir, I'm not talking about a full-blown audit. I guess maybe I should ask about your internal audit system in the district. Is there an internal auditor, someone that could follow up on the recommendations of this larger audit that works in the district?
Yes, ma'am. We do have a department that does that. And in fact, I think when this report was pulled together for the presentation here, that office went through and took a look at the recommendations and the findings and recommendations from the prior audits that Jackie showed in this table to make sure that we are following up on those recommendations.
So the district, I thought in the charter for the Audit and Finance Committee that there was not an internal auditor. So you're saying the district does have an internal audit department?
No, ma'am. We're saying there's a department that does that type of work in terms of the follow-up. We call it internal consulting, not internal audit.
So what department is that?
Internal consulting.
I mean, what? So that department falls under?
Under finance.
See, there's a whole conflict. And I'm sorry, Ms. Robeson, for stepping in before I was recognized, but.
Oh, no problem. Go ahead, Ms. Stan.
I just have a whole problem with the district, the size of our district, not having a separate and independent internal audit department. And I don't think that reporting to finance is the appropriate place for an internal audit department. There needs to be some segregation of duties there. So it's just a little hard to believe that the district does not have its own internal audit department.
I think we don't have time today, but it might be useful for the committee to understand how the structure of what that was created. The district at one time did have an internal audit department, and it was not really getting at the issues that the district needed to address. And so year after year after year, the internal audit department would issue a set of risk assessments, and they were the same areas of high risk year after year after year, no changes. And so what we created an external version of the internal audit. So we don't have a department of CCSD staff that conduct internal audits, but we have an external audit firm that's been hired to be our internal auditors. That firm does not report to finance; it reports its results to the committee.
Mhm. So these are just contractors, basically, the consultant contractors that we hired out. They look at everything, then they.
That's
bring
correct.
us the results.
And that structure is not unique where organizations will outsource their internal audit function. It's just for comparison, and there are organizations in capital that build schools and buildings. They have their own internal staff that manages all of that. The construction firms, that sort of thing. We outsource that here also.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Roberson. You complete?
Yeah, I have a lot of questions, and I think it'll not to belabor this today. Maybe it's best for me to write everything down and submit it. I hear what Mr. Kennedy is saying, but I agree with Ms. Stamp. With an organization this size, I understand that you're saying that you had it before and you found that it was not useful or being used all the time, and you went to outsourcing. But I think that there are some things that can be outsourced, and there are some things that still needs to be internal. So I'm willing to write down all of my questions that I have from this 59-page document for later discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grabowski. You're on mute. You're on mute. Mr. Grabowski, you're on mute.
There. I'm more concerned about, and I agree with Ms. Roberson and Ms. Stamp, but the top two, I see that it's saying it's completed on the ESSERs on FY24 on a high risk level, and I have to agree with that. Where are we in completing these two? Do we have two audits out there right now, or is this something we're going to start? The single audit ESSER and then the ESSER audit?
No, sir, both of those are complete.
Mm-hmm.
So those were the
Send it to
audits
the
that were
board.
completed in FY23.
No, sir, they were just completed in the last 30 to 60 days. They were presented to Audit and Finance Committee as well as the board.
Right, which they were presented to the board, and I'm just one for clarity because it doesn't make sense. Not FY24, be FY23. Or are you considering FY24 as being 23-24?
Yes, sir. That's our fiscal year. Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's okay by fiscal years. Got it. So those are the only two audits that we're relying on regarding ESSER. We don't have any other ESSER. That's the only information we're going to have in going into this budget year is what those two audits came up with.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Duke.
I'm good.
All right, Ms. Stamp, do you want to follow up?
Now, we received copies of the audit by Green Finney. Do we have access to the report, the second report from the second audit firm that did the ESSER, the other ESSER audit?
Yes, ma'am. I can send them to you again.
Okay, if it's,
I'll have to look back and see where exactly they are in board docs. And
well,
see
I
if they were-
can search. I can search
They
the
should have
board
been-
docs.
Yeah, they should have been posted in the December Audit and Finance Committee board.
Okay.
Docs, right?
Okay, I'll search there.
Okay.
So in looking at the two audits, did your team find any differences in what was presented in the two audits for the ESSER?
The
I'm
single
still
audit,
trying to figure out what the difference in the audits.
yes, ma'am. So the single audit came out clear. The ESSER audit that was performed by Fraser and Dieter, there weren't necessarily audit findings. There were concerns that they wanted us to focus in on and make sure that we were tightening up on some internal controls so that we didn't run into any issues. I believe there was 4 or 5 of them. Thank you.
Excuse me.
So there were a couple of findings in the Green Finning audit as well, right?
Not on the single audit for ESSER. No, ma'am. Now, there was a finding on the general operating side and on some special revenue, but not dealing with ESSER.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
So I can appreciate and understand how we might want to use third-party professionals in lieu of an in-house internal audit staff, because then it allows us to get special expertise that's hard to have full-time. And it allows you to bring in expertise to fit your different things that you're trying to audit versus having all those skills all the time, which is hard to pay for. So that I can understand. It does seem, though, that in the detailed recommendations, that some of these areas that are high risk, it recommends that we do every 12 to 18 months. And it sounds like resources are the constraint to why we're not doing some of these high risk areas more frequently. Is that the general response? Okay. So I think it's worth a more general discussion at a later meeting. How much more resources would it take to do some of these high risk audit areas externally or internally? And I'm presuming for the moment that externally is going to be more effective, both cost-wise and talent-wise. But if we were to move some of at least the high risk areas to every 24 months, it seems like that would be a prudent thing for us to consider. And along that line, the one change we might want to make to the existing plan might be to try to move up the capital programs piece, because the other high risk areas, I understand we've just done an audit in fiscal year 22. It's the one area that's high risk that doesn't look like we've done one in the last 2 years, and we aren't doing it again for 3 years. So is there more discussion on that?
Yes. We can certainly change that. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Joyce.
Yes, actually, the capital programs, we had our final AUP audit for the 17-22 program, which was presented to the board on August 28th, which would be our fiscal year 24. We do a mid-program AUP audit, which would be year 3 of the program, and then a final after year 6 of the program. We also partake in the annual CCSD financial audit and procurement audit.
So we're doing one every 3 and 6 years, plus it's a part of the general audit, which everything's a part of the general audit, but it's also part of the procurement audit, which we're doing that every year, correct? Right. So I hear all of that, and that gives me much more comfort. I still think if we're going to do it, right, if we've got it on the checklist, we would benefit from having it not as far out, right? Like if we've identified this as a high risk area, and I understand the other mitigating factors, these other audits that we do, if all of those audits are adequate, then we don't need it on the list at all, right? Or if it belongs on the list, it seems like it might need to be more frequently than 5 years out.
One approach would be to, I mean, it'd be easy enough for us to get a quote from the external audit firm about which, let's say that we need to do another 3 audits this year. I'll just make that up, the number up, and then how many hours it would take for each audit, and then what's the cost associated with it. And so since we're going into the budget season, it'll be appropriate time now to do that type of, and it's easy enough to get that type of cost information.
Certainly with the 4 or 5, high risk areas, and maybe the budget being the one moderate area.
Yeah. And that's
all my comments.
And that's exactly where I wanted to go to. Do we already have a quote right now from them presented for the audits?
We talked about a range because he's done so many of these audits with, he did them with Elliott Davis. So we talked about a range, but it just depends on the scope of work and how in depth we need to go. Do we need to go back more than one fiscal year? So it could be anywhere from 39,000 on up to, 60, 75, 80,000, just depends.
And we're going to have to build that into the budget coming up, correct?
Yes, sir.
And how much did we have budgeted from last year?
I believe it was 125,000.
And you know how much we spent so far?
No, sir, but I can find out.
All right.
Okay.
We can pull that, but then also I do think we should, as everybody else alluded to, we should probably bring some of the higher risk ones up. The budget one, I would actually like to, we said we can try to do that early after this next budget, once we get through this budget season. We plan to have our budget done by April, correct? As a family. April, May.
April, May.
All right. We're not going back into July. So we were to have our budget done as a family by April, May, when we can go into June, July, starting that audit, so we can stay still on this plan. But I think we can go ahead and let's go ahead and move forward and try to bring get the numbers or how much it would truly cost for to bring up some of those high risk assessments audits up and move for there. So with that, should we postpone this motion till next month?
Will that disrupt anything from the process from hiring?
It's just for,
Yes, sir.
it's just for information.
Then it would be great to hear what you learned about pricing out these other components.
Right.
And I understand, I understand I know we need to remind ourselves that it's not just the cost, it's the staff burden, right? So we need to be conscious of that.
Oh, yeah, right. So not just, so I like the fact that we're only doing 3 or 4 a year, but, just playing with the schedule on. All right, so with that, can we get a motion to postpone this until what's the meeting date for next month? February the 6th? We get a motion to postpone that audit plan, the FY25 audit plan to February 6th, audit finance meeting.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it. We'll postpone that one to the February 6th meeting. Right. Now for the information, our ESSER update. Ms. Carla?
Thank you, sir. So the ESSER update that we are providing this evening is through November 30th. We have spent total to date $109.7 million. We have $26.9 million encumbered right now, and our remaining unspent balance is approximately $26.6 million. Also attached is a report by objects. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Ms. Robertson?
Can you come back to me? Let me get my documents in order.
Will do. Mr. Grabowski?
I was counting on Darlene.
Wait a minute, Mr. Karowski, 1 second then. Okay.
You sure? Because I can go ahead.
I got him.
All right.
Miss Collin, I've done the percentages of what you've gotten back, what's reported on here. And it looks like, in some the categories, the reimbursement numbers are high, and then for some, it's fairly low. Just wondering, in the budget projections, have you taken into account the reimbursement amounts and that you received or yet to receive? And, are those monies going into, one account? Or what's your thought for the budget projections?
I think I understand what you're asking. When you're talking about the reimbursements to date, you're concerned because that number has not changed for the last couple months, right?
Yes.
So now we are, we have been filing claims on a quarterly basis. And so the next claim that we will file will be from October 2023 to December 2023, and that will be sometime in mid-February. And so from a budget standpoint, what is happening right now is the district is actually fronting, if you will, these costs, these expenses until we get reimbursed. So we are not running into any cash flow issues, or we would have already filed the claim sooner, but we're doing okay right now. So that's another reason why we've been able to hold off and do these claims on a quarterly basis.
Okay, I think you've answered my second question about, I just want to answer 3. I guess the same thing applies. I'm looking at the second page with the total salaries of 34%. I guess that number will move once you do your, I'm concerned about this number, 34% right here. Under, I think I have my documents right. We're on the ESSER. Are we talking about the ESSER 3 expenditures as well?
Yes,
okay, all right. I just want to make sure I have all my documents. The salaries, are all these are all these ESSER or any of these under the were any of these positions in the GOF before?
Yes, ma'am. Some were in GOF, some were in special revenue, and we moved them over to, ESSER funding. And so that's part of the impact study, if you will, that are about to start being reviewed. So we can determine which one of these positions that are currently in ESSER will be moved back to general operating fund or to special revenue funds.
Thank you, because I was going to ask when would they move. So we're going to look at all that from the impact reports.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, I'm done, Mr. Kabrowski.
Yeah, and that's, building on that, because that's $47 million when you put those two numbers up, and that's quite a hole for GOF to be looking at this point. So I'm hoping, Ms. Huggins, that we're going to be seeing that impact as to how we're going to be filling this hole, because that just seems like such a huge abyss. And then I look at a lot of this, of the encumbrances that haven't been spent. And I know it's been said before that all the money has been encumbered, yet I still see that we have this amount of unencumbered funds. So how do you explain that?
Well, I think there seems to be some confusion between the word encumbered and what's been allocated to schools, central offices. So for me, as an accounting person, as a finance person, when I hear the word encumbered, I believe that is actually what has been put aside, whether it's in payroll encumbrances or a purchase order. That is what has been put aside in our software that has been attached to either, like I said, a payroll encumbrance or a purchase order. We have some programs and that have been assigned or allocated to schools that haven't been spent yet, because whether they're waiting on a non-compete approval from the State Department of Education, because we're trying to use ESSER funds for it, or if it's just something maybe the school hasn't been able to actually get going yet, and they're planning on doing it now that we're back from, for the new fiscal or the new school year, the new calendar year. There's a couple different things, that could create that, but that's why we wanted to show you what is actually encumbered, not what's been allocated. What's been allocated is what's in the spending plan, which is the third column over. And
Right.
And Mr. Grabowski, this is Anita. We are not going to be able to transition all of those positions into the GOF. We're working now to determine the impact of those positions and what the return on investment has been. And then we will make some decisions about how we move forward. Mr. Brigman in HR has worked to make sure all staff that is included in GOF has been notified and have been I'm sorry, Mr. Kennedy. Oh, I'm sorry. All positions in ESSER. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. And we're working through that now with the associate superintendents. We'll have an impact meeting next week. We're beginning the process to look at allocations tomorrow with a group of 40 different educators from across the system.
Because I see us going into the negative pretty quickly, and I'm assuming it's going to almost double on the employment retirement, and your teacher professionals said, line 112, and then line 220. So how do we address those for projecting them to the end of the year and then address them into the budget? I mean, that's why these impact studies are going to be so important.
Right. So let me make sure I understand what you're asking me. You see the negative in the fiscal year available budget for employment retirement line 220. Okay. So if you look above that, you'll see a surplus for 210 for group health insurance. And then the line below that, you'll see a surplus of Social Security. We will move those budgets around to cover what looks like, a deficit. Does that answer your question?
Oh, I'm sure you can do that with all these lines, but, that's why when you try to make this clarification of what's encumbered and what's not encumbered or allocated, and what's, it gets kind of confusing.
Yeah.
But because it does seem like the numbers haven't been changing much as we've been going on through the year. That 26 million seems to be the same magic number over the last 4 months. As to available budget, it doesn't seem like it's a budget at all. And I know what you're saying is you're waiting for the schools to get back to you and say, well, this is what we're going to spend. But I'm assuming a lot of that is going to be covered in these impact studies. That's one of the questions that the principals were asked, as to how they foresee the next 4 months, rolling out. Am I correct?
Well, I think with the impact studies, the principals are trying to identify what purchases they made and what use of the ESSER dollars that they made that they think is going to have the biggest impact on their students. And then with that, then they would prefer they'll present that to us, and then with the intent of trying to the greatest extent possible, trying to continue those programs or expenditures using the general operating fund. But the reality is that the need that's going to be identified by the impact studies is going to be higher than the available funding from the general operating fund. And so that's where the prioritization comes in place. What's the most impactful? So that's going to be, I think, well, it's going to be impossible to backfill for 100% of what's being identified in the impact studies in the general operating fund. So we recognize that. And so what Ms. Huggins said, that tomorrow we have this committee of 40-something people, including school principals, to begin to take a look at it. And then next week, we have an impact study meeting. So we'll start bringing all this together so that when we come to the Audit and Finance Committee, in the future, we can have some analysis done and recommendations.
Well, I appreciate that, but I still, as I look back through all my notes, that 26 million has stayed rock solid for at least 4 months on available budget for FY24.
Oh, okay.
And I'm just having a hard time wrapping my head around it, how that could happen. So I know it's all going to come down to what these impact studies are as to what we're going to need to try to find on the GOF. But this just seems like an astronomical number.
So I'm looking at I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm looking at the expenditure by object through the end of October. And I do see what you're saying. The FY24 encumbrance is 27.6 million. And so we can do an analysis on that to see what's changed. Just to give you that level of comfort that the encumbrance total, for the last 3 months is accurate.
Please do, because it just you look at it and you're going like, huh. But anyway, I don't want to belabor this point. I think the impact studies are just critical, and this shows why. When you've got over $47 million in salaries and benefits.
Okay, we will do that. Thank you, sir.
With the understanding that it's not going to be able to, be fully rolled into, but it's just such a huge hole. Okay, I have no more further questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Duke. All right, Ms. Stamp.
I'm good.
I'm good.
All right.
No other questions.
Okay, I will hold most of my questions till after the impact report. I just had one comment. Pie chart that has the salaries and benefits at 28 million for 44%. I think that is off from the 34%, 37, 831, 722, up at the top. I don't know if that should be, is that a typo or a misprint or so?
Okay, I will have staff take a look at that. Thank you.
And I just wanted to follow up because Ms. Roberson brought up something. She said that you said that some of the positions were GOF and they went over to ESSER. And where did those lines go when they were taken away from GOF?
They were either just identified as vacancies or they may have been let go. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure. You're asking where those positions went in GOF whenever they moved to ESSER. But yes, some of them may have gone away. Some of them may be vacancies. They may have been backfilled. It just depends on the different positions.
Okay.
Like,
so
I don't have a concrete answer for all of them.
Right.
Yes,
So
sir.
what type of positions were these that were moved over?
I don't know that right off the top of my head. I apologize. I can find out and yeah, I can follow up.
Yeah, but like I said, I have most of my questions that come after the impact reports, but yeah,
Okay.
yeah, let's get back to that.
Okay.
Once we start getting harder on the budget and ESSER stabilization, which we set for 18 million, 22 million. We got a number on that yet? ESSER stabilization for the budget of the plan. Well,
Say that number again. I'm sorry. I was writing your notes.
the
my
ESSER
notes.
stabilization number, have we start trying to work around that number about how much we are looking to try to stabilize?
No, sir, not at this point, but we're getting closer to that.
Cool.
Mhm.
All right, that's all I have for right now. Any further questions? Hearing none, we're gonna move on to the monthly capital projects report.
Oh, we skipped over the budget process update.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
We are
okay.
at B. We are
All
at
right.
B. Yep. Back to you, Ms. Carla.
So, thank you, sir.
Mhm.
So I tried to bring hard copies for everybody because I know looking at this on the screen is a little bit hard. So just to lay out the geography of this document, the first column lays out the different types of revenues that we have. And with the subset of local revenues, intergovernmental, state, et cetera. The next 4 columns over are what we call our audited revenues from our financial statements for fiscal year 20, 21, 22, and 23. We just try to list this out to give you a historical perspective of the types of revenues that have been coming in for the last 4 years. And then the next 3 columns that are in blue are the actual average from fiscal 20 to fiscal 23. And then we also take in consideration the average change in the dollar amount. So we can see fluctuations for fiscal year 20 through fiscal year 23. And then we also calculate the average annual percentage change. And this here again helps us budget for outer years. The next column has the fiscal year 2024 board approved budget that was just approved back in June with a total of $702.4 million. And so then the last few columns are what we are calling our early preliminary projections for fiscal year 25, 26, and 27. So looking at the local sources for fiscal year 25, this is not what we're recommending. It's just something we've always done when we're reporting early projections. We use the latest local tax assessments that were from September 2023, and we added a 3% growth assessment on those, a 3% growth rate on those particular assessments. And we factored in a 3.3 annual mill increase. And there's another document that is now attached in board docs that we brought with us, but it is attached in board docs, and we'll go over that where to just explain where we get the 3.3 millage increase when we're looking at these multi-year budgets. So looking at local sources, the 3 highest revenue line items is, of course, the local taxes, which is the first line item. And then, of course, delinquent taxes, the second one. And then a few down is the revenue in lieu of taxes. So those 3 line items make up the most of what we call our local sources. The next section is the intergovernmental revenue. We are not seeing any significant changes in either one of these revenue line items. And then the next section is our state sources. And of course, this is mostly where we get our state aid to classroom from the state, as well as retirement, bus driver salary, things like that. We also get some property tax relief from the state that's included in these numbers as well. And then the next section is federal sources. And then, of course, we have our transfers. So over and all, when you look at the fiscal year board approved budget at $702.4 million, right now, based upon what we know, we are projecting for fiscal year 25, $749 million, which is an increase of about $46.7 million. I can go into more detail on how we got to that, but just a few things to caveat. We will not receive the state revenue projections, which we call the House projections, until March. So right now, the way that we are budgeting our state revenues is about a 5% annual increase. If you'll notice, the change from fiscal year 23 to fiscal year 24 was about 11% increase. And we just want to be a lot more conservative than that. I just don't see us getting another 11% increase in state revenues. I could be wrong, but I just want to be very conservative with what we're doing for fiscal year 25. So with that, when we talk about the increase in revenues from fiscal year 24 to 25, at about $46.7 million. I know right off the bat, that sounds like a lot of money, but when you look back at some of our required increases for fiscal year 24 that were in the budget, those required increases right off the bat were about $51.4 million. And that included teacher raises, the teacher step going from 31 to 40 years. That was about 28.9 million. The retirement increase was about 3.1 million. Health and dental was about 1.3 million. If you recall the paid parental leave, that was about 1.6 million. The list just goes on and on. Charter schools, 6 million. Our operations contractual obligations were about 10.7. So I just wanted to just caution that I know the $46.7 million seems like a lot, but that could be used up very quickly with our required increases, which staff and I are just starting to start working on those. They're going to be very early projections because we don't really have anything concrete yet from the state, but we feel like we have enough historical perspective to start doing some analytical work. The second document, which was uploaded in board docs right before this meeting, and the reason why is I needed to verify a couple things with the assessor's office. But one of the things we wanted to show or share with you was the allowable millage history from fiscal year 19 to 23. Just so you could get a perspective of why we build the multi-year with a 3.3 mill increase and then a 3% growth rate. And if, as you can tell, the allowable millage increase, well, I'm sorry, let me back up. So the percentages, the consumer price index and the population growth, these are the percentages that drive our allowable millage increase. And these percentages come from the South Carolina Revenue and Fiscal Affairs. We normally get final percentages in March. And so what we try to do is look at historically what they've been. So for this particular document, we did a 5-year average for fiscal year 23. And as you can tell, the 5-year average was about 3.64. If you're wondering why we didn't include fiscal year 24, because the consumer price index for 24 was at an above all high. We'd never seen an 8% percentage point, come in that way. So we didn't want to use that, in our 5-year average. So what we also wanted to show is that we have unused mills that are available that drop off, after 3 years. We are not saying we're going to lose these 4.4 mills, but we just wanted to make y'all aware that there are 4.4 mills from prior years that could be used if we wanted to look at doing another millage increase. And so we went ahead and just listed out the fiscal year 25 allowable millage increase, which is approximately 8 mills. The value of the mill has increased a little bit from last year. If you recall, last year, we always said the value of a mill was around $3 million. This year, based upon what we know now, it's approximately $3.2 million. And so we just wanted to show that if we used the allowable millage increase, the 5-year average, plus any allowable millage increase for the unused mills, we could look at possibly doing another 8 mill increase, which would bring revenue projections to approximately 25.7. Another reason we wanted to show this is the next chart below that is our tax increment financings. And these are starting to escalate around, I'd say somewhere between 29% to, and it could be higher. We noticed a significant change in fiscal year 23 with 2 TIFs, the North Charleston Naval Base TIF and the North Charleston Ingleside TIF. And what I found out is, because the revitalization and the improvements have started to ramp up, this actually increases the property tax values, which the opposite effect of that is it impacts our tax increment financing. And which, I make sure that I explain it. These are reductions to our local revenues. These are monies that we've committed to that come off our revenues that are for years out. If you notice, the TIFs are listed on the first column, And we went ahead and added when they began and when they end, just to kind of give you an idea of how long these TIFs have been on our books, so to speak. And then we gave you some historical actuals, which this information is provided to us from the Charleston County Treasurer's Office. And so as you can see, they are starting to escalate, some more than others. And when you see these big percentages, it's usually because the revitalization and those improvements have started and their property values are going up. Once you start seeing those large increases, at some point they start to equalize and they stay more consistent. And so I think that's what we're seeing right now with those two from fiscal year 23, is that things are really starting to ramp up, and at some point it'll even itself out. So I just wanted to share that with y'all as well. I know it's a lot of data to go over in one meeting. So if you have any questions now or later, please, feel free to email my team and I.
All right, Ms. Roberson.
Thank you, Ms. Collin. I'm going to, I do have lots of questions, but I'm going to ask just basic ones right now. I know that we have an opportunity to use millage, and we did that last budget cycle. My question is, what has the district done since then to cut costs?
Well, I have not actually started. Well, I apologize. I'm not able to answer that on the spot right now at this moment, because I have just started working on the December financial update, where we start projecting through the end of the fiscal year. And I am seeing some cost savings, but I haven't been able to dive into them and do some full analysis on them. So if you could just give me a couple more weeks, I will be better prepared to answer that question on what we've done as far as cutting costs.
Okay, that's fair enough. And so to continue on that, I find that the district has a lot of consultants. Can you also hold those consultants' contracts to see if all of these consultants are necessary? Do we have folks that are sitting in FTEs that's doing the same work? And we may not need consultants to do that. I think that's a way of cutting cost. And I would be interested to see deliverables from these consultants. I think legal fees is another area that we could look at, that I would like to have some information on, as far as cutting costs as well. And then my final question is on the part where tuition and parents paying tuition. What is the process in place for parents that don't pay the tuition?
Just a moment.
Mrs. Roberson, in regards to students who don't pay tuition, our Sharon Brideharp and our legal team take care of that. Students are required to return to their home school. We can certainly generate for the Board of Trustees a list of consultants. We have the chiefs in each area manage the consultants for the group of folks that they supervise. So we'd have to rely on feedback from them in regards to deliverables. In regards to legal fees, as you know, we've posted for a staff attorney. That posting has closed. We are hopeful that that certainly will cut down on some of our legal costs moving forward.
Thank you. And I think getting the information from the staff, but getting the consultants list from the procurement office, because I'm sure that these contracts go through procurement as well. I would want to do some type of cross-reference to make sure that we have captured all consultants and their fees and their deliverables.
We certainly can work with Mr. Craven on that. A lot of our consultants are in our academic division, leading educators, other folks, education elements that work with us on improving student outcomes. So we can work internally with Jeffrey and our chiefs to make sure that we have a list that's comprehensive and we look at the outcomes associated with each.
I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Grabowski.
Ms. Carlin, I'm just trying to understand the TIFs and the reductions in revenue and how they are allocated on, I mean, is this a reduction in line item 110 on your multi-year revenue projections?
Yes, sir. Yes to both your questions. Mhm.
And so as I see it over the change has been, I mean, in 21, it was 13%, and then 22 was 26%, 21%, and then last year was 18, and then you're using 30%.
Well, so the reason why I'm using 30%, if you look at the total line and you look at the change from FY23 versus FY22, the overall change is 28.7%. And so that's where I'm getting the percentage from. I'm not able to look at each TIF individually because there's some inconsistency. So I try to look at all of them across the board and treat them as 1% increase, as 1%, excuse me.
And, obviously, I mean, I remember the North Charleston, set TIF, but the City of Charleston, West Ashley redevelopment and City of Charleston, Morrison Drive development, there's no beginning and an ending, yet there are no expenses allocated to it or reductions allocated to it. Can you explain what those are?
Yes, I can. So these are two new TIFs that the board approved, prior board approved. However, nothing has started yet. There's no revitalization. There's no improvements that I'm aware of through the end of June 30th. It could start up this year, but based upon the information I've received from the Charleston County Treasurer's Office and the Assessor's Office, these TIFs have not started back up yet. And so on the flip side, what that means is that end date is probably going to get expanded out. Because if it's a 25-year TIF and it doesn't start till 25, it will go on till 2050.
Ouch.
Yes, sir.
I have no further questions.
Okay, thank you. And that's why we wanted to share this with you so you could see that these are some of the revenue reductions that we work with, even when we do have millage increases.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grabowski. Excuse me, Mr. Duke.
I'm good. I have no questions.
Ms. Stamp. Hearing none.
My question is, will we have a similar roll forward for the next 3 years on the expense side? And I don't know if that's something that would come at the next meeting, but or what's the timing on being able to look at both of those? And then obviously what's the effect on fund balance of the combined?
Yes, sir. So we have just started working on that, and we plan to bring that to the February Audit and Finance Committee. So we can look at revenues and expenditures all at the same time. Yes,
And I
sir.
know that expenditure projection gets very muddied with all of the budget discussions, of course, so I understand that. But
It does.
it seems like a baseline of here's the 3 years based on some kind of standard assumptions like you've done on the revenue side.
Exactly.
And then obviously the board and everyone's going to weigh in on the ESSER roll forward and all those other factors. But having a baseline of, made some simple assumptions, what that looks like and what our fund balance does. So I guess to reiterate, I know I say this all the time, but when we do have the expense projections, I would very much like us to see what our debt projections and our fund balance projections go along with it. Kind of
Yes.
almost like a balance sheet going with your.
Sure. Yes, we can do that.
Thanks.
Thank you. And you said we're not getting the house projections till about March.
I'm sorry, say that
You said
again?
we're not getting the house projections till March.
Yeah, and it's towards the end of March.
Cool. Okay, I have no further questions. This is
Hey, and Mr. Calhoun, I have one.
Go ahead.
It just and because I saw recently that Ms. Weaver, this state superintendent, was looking at increasing teacher salaries, and I'm assuming in her budget, as she does something like that, as it's being reported, that it's going to be something we're going to be reimbursed for on the increase. I mean, I hope so. But also, it goes back. Last year with the state on the 11%, that was under the new formula, right?
Yes, sir. That was the new formula. Right. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. But the state's not going to reimburse us 100% for teacher salary increases because of our school district and the way that our impact of tax-paying ability works. There is this expectation that we will increase millage to cover majority of any of our increases. We don't get as much state revenues as some of the smaller, more rural school districts do.
No, I understand that because we send everything up and then we get our percentage back. But so you're taking that. I'm just a little concerned when I hear that, because I also heard that 1,500 may be 3,000 once if they increase the days of work from 190 to 195. So in following what's being discussed, the last day up in Columbia, it's got me kind of concerned, into how, if the state makes this mandatory $3,000 jump, how we're going to be, whether we're taking that into consideration right now. And I know this is all speculation, everybody, but it did seem to be a hot topic yesterday when I was up in Columbia. Anyway, okay.
Thank you for sharing that. No, thank you.
Well, hearing no further questions, comments, or concerns, we will move forward to now the 5C monthly capital projects report, where we're going to go to Ms. Shaw left and Ms. Costello.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Committee Chairman, Mr. Calhoun, Committee Vice Chair, Ms. Dunmeyer, Roberson, and Acting Superintendent Huggins. I'd like to present the November 2023 Capital Projects Report. Our revenue collections for this month were $429,000 below the cash flow model projection based on the most recent collections, with 2% growth over the prior year. The expenditures are as follows. For the 2010 through 2016 program, $20,000. The 2017 through 2022 program, $1.1 million. The 2023 through 2028 capital program expenditures were $8.1 million. The 2023 through 2028 long-term debt projects were $630,000. The fixed cost of ownership 24 projects. The program is about halfway through the school year. And in February, staff will be bringing to you for approval the BAN 2024 financing and the fixed cost of ownership fiscal year 25 program project list for your approval. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you for that. Ms. Roberson?
I have no questions.
Mr. Grabowski?
I have no questions at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Duke?
I have no questions at this time.
Ms. Stanton?
No questions.
And I have no questions myself. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And lastly, our monthly financial report, back to Ms. Carlin.
Thank you, sir. So this is our financial update through November 30th. We've collected approximately $107.9 million in revenues. We're up $20.5 million compared from this time last year to this year. On the expenditure side, we've spent approximately $219.6 million. And compared to last year, we're up about $24.8 million, mostly in salaries and benefits, which is, as we've mentioned before, due to the salary, or excuse me, yes, the salary increases for teachers as well as classified staff and administrators. We're seeing a slight increase in purchase services, same result as last month. It's mostly due to an increase in the cleaning services contract, and we are actually receiving first student invoices earlier this year. And so it looks like we're spending money a little bit faster, and in some ways we are. The other areas are in line. Total transfers are up about $3.3 million. We'll be taking a closer look at this now that once the state finalizes the 45-day count, it still has not been finalized. And we'll be able to take a closer look at that and see where we're projecting to end as of June 30th on that particular. Other than that, things are going well. We have started receiving our local tax revenues. You know, we start receiving a bulk of that in the end of November, beginning of December and January, and we're already starting to see that millions and millions of dollars rolling in. So,
Perfect.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Roberson.
Ms. Collins, under expenditures, where are the lawsuits listed? Where can you find the lawsuits?
That is under total other objects.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Mr. Gabrowski.
Ms. Carlin, so right now you're anticipating potentially using fund balance reserves of 14 million?
That is what we budgeted at this point. We're not sure if we're going to need that or not. Once I'm able to complete the December financial update, I'll have a better handle on what we might need to use for fund balance.
So that was the 8.4 that we saved last year, and then we just added 6 in just as a projection potential. Because I see where I missed it. So right now we're not projecting having to use any of it.
Not at this point, no, sir.
And when do you think we're going to? I mean, this seems like an interesting year in that a lot of these funding sources are coming in sooner, and a lot are coming later. Is this something that we usually see, or is this going to stabilize at some point that we can look at it and say, yes, this is where we were last year, instead of where it seems like on the local tax, due to the timing of receiving tax revenues this year compared to last year, it wasn't the same. Am I making myself clear? It just seems like
You are. And
here it seems to be all over the place, like a roller coaster of when the funds are coming in.
yes, and it is a timing, and sometimes it has something to do with the reconciliation at the treasurer's office.
Okay.
She has funds and she's not sure where they need to be released to. She'll make sure she has all of her, reconciliations done before she releases any money, to the other entities. It could be a multitude of different things.
Thank you.
All right, thank
I
you.
have no questions.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Duke.
No, I have no questions.
All right, Ms. Stamp.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
And am I understanding next month is when we'll be able to see we'll finally see what our projection is through the end of the year?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Perfect. And Mr. Gabrowski asked my question about the fund balance. So it don't seem like it unless something crazy happens over the next couple months that we will have to use our fund balance. All right. Well, thank you. That's all we have for that.
Thank you.
Now we'll go to everything that needs to move forward to the board meeting. I cannot think right. So we have 4A, 4B, 4C. We can send these over, but then we'll just give a quick summary of them over there as well. So, and we can send over the information items as well, but we'll just give a quick summary when we get there. Any other questions, comments, concerns, thoughts? Hearing none, we will go ahead. Our next meeting is February 6, 2024, 2 o'clock, same time, same place. And we have a motion to adjourn.